Part 49. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 481. There were a total of 6 members of the Blood Demon cult, walking on the bustling street, more than 50 meters away from Lu Yizhan, who was shouting and telling people's fortunes. Each of them was scanning the pedestrians on the street with sharp eyes. Xiaopinggan recognized one of those people. He had seen him before in Yanshan City. The man had a sallow face, a little goatee, and his eyes looked like there was only a slit. As for why the other 5 Xiaopinggan was able to confirm that they were the Blood Demon cult, it was very simple because those guys were wearing dark red mage robes. On the chest of the mage robe, there was a strange-looking protective shield sewn into the mage robe. The mind mirror allows people to know at a glance that those people are in the same group. And that breast-protecting mirror, if you take a closer look, holy shit, it's clearly a face mirror. It's just that the face mirror is sewn on the mage's robe, covering part of the edge area. It's used as a breast-protecting mirror, making it less eye-catching. They can take the makeup mirror with them wherever they go, and they won't wave it around in their hands to cause trouble for themselves. If it was Xiaopinggan in the past, they would be locked by them just by swaying in front of the makeup mirror. Seeing the people from the Blood Demon sect walking towards here, Xiaopinggan didn't panic, let alone run. Instead, he easily turned around and found himself in front of a stall selling sea beads by sharks on the street. It looked like he was in it's the same as choosing sea beads. After a while, Lu Yizhan walked past Xiaopinggan while shouting, "Fortune teller, I'm a fool, come to me, Lu Bangxian, for only 100 gold coins." Lu Yizhan, who was passing by on the street, shouted. When he passed the place where Xiaopinggan was just now, his nose suddenly moved. He moved, sniffed the air, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes, and then he looked at the surrounding crowd, and his pace slowed down. The 6 people from the Blood Demon sect then walked past. Xiaopinggan deliberately turned around, exposed the side of his face, and let one of them take a look at himself in the mirror. As a result, there was nothing abnormal about those people's mirrors. Xiaopinggan finally breathed a sigh of relief. After he mastered the secret method of transformation, in this world of god-killing insects, the face mirror of the Blood Demon sect was completely useless to him. The biggest threat was removed. Xiaopinggan wanted to see how the Blood Demon sect's people could find him. As soon as the thought came to his mind, the god of fortune boy jumped out of Xiaopinggan's secret mandala, climbed onto Xiaopinggan's shoulders, grinned, and followed the Blood Demon cult people in the blink of an eye. Xiaopinggan wanted to see the recent blood. What kind of tricks are the people of the demon cult playing? If you know yourself and the enemy, you will be victorious in any battle. These purple sea beads are 20 gold coins each. Do you want to buy them? If you don't buy them, don't stop me from doing business. The shark selling sea beads saw Xiaopinggan playing with a few sea beads for a while and couldn't help but ask directly. Well, these sea beads are pretty good, here are 5. Xiaopinggan smiled slightly, waved his hand, took out 100 gold coins, bought 5 sea beads, put away the sea beads, turned around and left. Just as he turned around and took 2 steps, an old face suddenly popped out from the side and blocked the way, almost startling Xiaopinggan. "This little brother, I think you are very kind-hearted. We are quite destined. Why don't I give you a fortune? For only 100 gold coins, maybe I can help you turn disaster into good luck." Lu Yizhan looked at Xiaopinggan with a smile. How did this guy find himself? I didn't even think of saying hello to him just now. Thoughts flashed through Xiaopinggan's mind quickly. There were so many people on the street, and this old man Lu didn't judge everyone's fate, so how could he just happen to be blocking him by such a coincidence? Looking at Lu Yizhan's eyes staring at him again, with an expression that was half smiling but not smiling, his eyes were a little strange, and he was looking at himself from head to toe. Xiaopinggan immediately understood that this Lu Yizhan, he already knew that he was Kui Li, and he used his identity as Kui Li to contact him. Xiaopinggan smiled slightly and said, "Okay, then I'll ask the old gentleman to help me with the calculation. I won't pay you if the calculation is not accurate. Come, 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 little brother, let's go to the street to talk, and I'll give you a good count." Lu Yizhan smiled and walked directly to an eaves on the street, waving his hand. He took out a small table and stools, set up a stall on the street, and asked Xiaopinggan to sit down in front of him, and began to tell Xiaopinggan's fortune. "Brother, do you want to draw lots or meet in person?" "Just meet." Lu Yizhan waved his hand and directly set up a silent barrier in front of everyone to prevent the conversation between the two from being heard by outsiders. Then he took a closer look at Xiaopinggan's current face, and suddenly his face became serious. "Brother, I'm afraid you're in big trouble now, and maybe you'll be killed." "Oh, why?" Xiaopinggan raised his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes. "Sir, please tell me carefully." Lu Yuqian touched his beard. "From what I see, brother, your enemy is probably looking for you. Once found, brother, you will be in great danger." After hearing this, Xiaopinggan was not too surprised, because if Lu Yizhan could recognize that he was Kui Li, then Kui Li was still wanted by Wanchen sect Immortal City at this moment, and Lu Yizhan knew that Kui Li was wanted. Strangeness. "Sir, you are right. I am indeed in trouble now, and someone is indeed looking for me." Xiaopinggan said with a smile, "I wonder how to resolve this issue." "It's not difficult to resolve it. In fact, there is a way," Lu Yizhan said with a smile. "Oh, what can I do?" "Brother, you may not believe this method, but as long as you follow it, I will keep you safe." "Sir, you haven't said what the method is yet." "It's very simple. As long as you listen to my arrangements from now on, you can do whatever I ask you to do, and I will keep you safe." Lu Yizhan suddenly smiled, and that smile was indescribably weird and suddenly a little strange. "Haha, sir, are you crazy? It doesn't matter. Since your fortune telling is half correct, sir, I will pay you the 100 gold coins and treat it as a treat for you to drink, sir." Xiaopinggan took out put 100 gold coins on the table, "turn around and leave. If I shout here now that Xiaopinggan, who is being hunted by the blood demon cult, is here, brother, can you run away?" Lu Yizhan said calmly. Xiaopinggan's heart was shocked, but his face was a little confused, and he sat down again. "Brother Lu, are you trying to deceive me? Brother, can you recognize me as Kui Li? I admit it. The Immortal City is indeed wanted now." "Me, brother Lu, you said I am Xiaopinggan, where do you start from? If you shout like that, people will die. Brother, if you weren't Xiaopinggan, what were you hiding from when those people from the blood demon sect came up behind me just now?" Lu Yizhan looked at Xiaopinggan, his eyes narrowed, and he suddenly warned, "Brother, you'd better not summon anything. If you really make any noise, you're asking for death." Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 482. Xiaopinggan was already ready to take action, and several powerful spells were ready to go. However, on the surface, he was still very calm. He just sighed suddenly and smiled bitterly. "Brother Lu, we met back then, until now, there has been no grievance or enmity, we can be considered destined, and we are quite happy to get along with each other. We can meet again here today. I don't know how Brother Lu recognized me, but why do you have to embarrass me again? Just now I'm hiding from the blood demon cult, I don't even know who those people are, I'm just hiding from you, brother. Ha ha ha, I am a fortune teller, what can I hide from?" Lu Yuqian shook his head and smiled, with a warm look on his face. "Those people from the blood demon sect have been in the Immortal Sea for several days, and everyone knows where they are coming. I've been keeping an eye on those who are looking for Xiaopinggan. If I hadn't known their identities, I wouldn't have noticed anything unusual about you just now. To be honest, I was framed by someone in the Wanchen sect before, and I am now wanted in the Immortal City, so I changed my appearance. Brother and I know each other again. How could I not hide when I suddenly see you, brother, Xiaopinggan said calmly, because he was already convinced that Lu Yizhan could not know that he was Xiaopinggan. Half of what Lu Yizhan just said was his inference, and the other half should be to deceive himself. This guy is too cunning. If you don't believe me, brother, you can ask a deacon of the Immortal City to see if I was wanted by the Immortal City before. When Xiaopinggan said this, Lu Yizhan's eyes moved, and he hesitated a little. You are wanted by the Wanchen section, let's tell you what happened. Xiaopinggan didn't hide anything, and directly told all the troubles he had caused because of the 7-star sword whip. He even told him how he came to the Immortal City to poison Meng and kill him. The details were complete and vivid. It's not just made up. In Xiaopinggan's telling, the 7-star sword whip became the top-level Horcrux he accidentally discovered in the Abyss Canyon. Because he took it out and killed several mantis bugs, it made people jealous and caused a series of subsequent events. Matter. Of course, Xiaopinggan also had reservations, and he also kept an eye on it. He did not say that he knew the soul refining method, nor did he reveal his other identity, Xuanhuan, nor did he say that he had joined the Wanchen sect and was a member of the Wanchen section outer disciple. The more Lu Yizhan knows about this information, the more things he will be able to piece together. If he doesn't tell it, Lu Yizhan cannot know everything, so there is room for it. According to Xiaopinggan, after he was wanted by the Immortal City, he could only hide his name and change his appearance for fear of being recognized by acquaintances. When he met Lu Yizhan just now, he just subconsciously wanted to avoid it, which was completely reasonable. Oh, what does the 7-star sword whip you mentioned look like? Take it out and let me see. Lu Yizhan said directly. Is it convenient here? Xiaopinggan looked at the busy streets around him. What's the inconvenience? It's okay now. Lu Yushuan waved his hand and cast an illusion, which directly transformed Xiaopinggan and him into fortune-telling in the silent barrier. Outsiders couldn't find anything unusual at first glance. Xiaopinggan could only take out the 7-star sword whip. As soon as he saw the 7-star sword whip, Lu Yushuan's eyes suddenly lit up, and he snatched the 7-star sword whip away. After looking at it over and over for a few times, he immediately praised, it is indeed a top-notch Horcrux, and it actually has a sword. There are 2 forms of whip and whip. I didn't expect you, brother Kui Li, to be so lucky. Such a Horcrux can be found in the underground abyss. Tisk, 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 yes, yes, this Horcrux is in your hands, brother Kui Li. It's really annoying. If you are jealous, you will get yourself into trouble. Let's do this. I'll work harder, and I will keep this Horcrux for you from now on. Brother, do you have any objections? It's a blessing that this Horcrux is favored by you, brother. I don't have any objections. I'll just give it to you as your traveling money. Please let me go. Xiaopinggan had a bitter look on his face, but when he heard Lu Yizhan start calling him Kui Li again, he suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that the most dangerous level had been overcome for the time being. Lu Yizhan, this bastard, just used words to deceive himself. If he couldn't keep calm and he knew that he was Xiaopinggan, he didn't know what would happen now. If you still have any good things with you, take them out. Lu Yushuan licked his lips and glanced at Xiaopinggan, already treating Xiaopinggan as a fat sheep. Brother, when we first met, I didn't have any good things in me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone to the 10,000 Death Sect as you call me to work for 2 world pearls. What I have now, except for a few gold coins, and there's really nothing like elixirs that you can take a fancy to, brother. I guess you won't take a fancy to those elixirs and gold coins. Xiaopinggan spread his hands and said, at this time, Xiaopinggan also discovered that this Lu Yizhan was definitely not a fortune teller. This guy could blackmail himself and dared to follow the blood demon cult. He was definitely a bold character. He was not a good person. His previous image was nothing like it. He performed it himself, which can be regarded as a layer of protection. Haha, you are right. Your transformation spell is pretty good. Where did you learn it? I almost didn't even realize it. It's a world bead. Xiaopingan carefully described what the small seal on the transformed world bead looked like. I got it by chance before, and I don't know how it was fused, so I mastered such a skill. Secret method. Okay, since we know each other, I won't embarrass you anymore. Lu Yizhan looked at Xiaopingan with a smile, his eyes were like needles. When he moved his hand, there was a golden silkworm baby on his hand. The silkworm baby, the whole body was flashing with golden light, and there was a blood-red bloodline on the back. It looked a bit like a summoned thing, but it also had a trace of the power of life and blood that the summoned object did not have. Come on, open your mouth, eat this, and let's talk slowly. Damn it, it's the soul-stealing goo again. Why do these old guys always like to play such insidious things? Cursed all over. However, the Xiaopingan at this moment is no longer the Xiaopingan when he met true monarch Styx. Xiaopingan's face showed a look of struggle. Brother, it's pointless if you do this, why bother? Ha ha ha, it seems that you know what this is, brother, so there is no need for me to talk nonsense. I think it is very interesting and necessary. You can choose now, or I will send you to the Xuanhuan sect and lead. I'm offering a reward. Either you can try to release the spell you prepared and see if you can escape from me, or you can swallow this soul-stealing goo honestly and give me some time to go to the Xuanhuan section only after I understand the situation and see if you are telling the truth. Can I feel at ease? Lu Yizhan smiled, but his attitude was very determined. Xiaopingan struggled in his heart. Lu Yizhan might have been hiding his strength before. He couldn't figure out what level of cultivation he had reached. He was so sure that he was not afraid of resisting at all. Xiaopingan could only pinch his nose and swallow the soul-stealing goo into his stomach again. Ha ha ha, brother Kuili is really smart. Lu Yuqian suddenly laughed. In the past few days, brother Kuili had better not leave within 100 miles of Yundao. Once you leave, you might explode. He died of his body. Don't blame me for not warning you in advance. Also, if you feel your stomach hurts at any time, come to the Chunfeng building in front of this street. That's because I have something to talk to you about. Okay, brother Kuili, come on, I still have to make money by telling people's fortunes. As he spoke, Lu Yizhan waved his hand, and the illusion and Sister Shizun disappeared in an instant. He stood up, holding his fortune-telling sign, and smiled at Xiaopingan, with that money-grubbing and wretched smile on his face again. This brother, remember what I just said to you. That is the way to seek good luck and avoid disaster. Brother, if you introduce a friend, I will give you a discount. Thanks for the advice, brother, Xiaopingan smiled bitterly. Ha ha ha, let's go. Lu Yushuan laughed, put away the tables and benches, and came back to the street to start shouting, fortune tellers, I am an innocent child, come to me, Lu Bangxian, for only 100 gold coins. Xiaopingan watched Lu Yizhan's figure gradually disappearing into the crowd, rubbed his face, and sighed in his heart. He didn't expect that he would almost fall into the hands of this guy Lu Yizhan today. Fortunately, I had temporarily deceived him just now. If I had been deceived by Lu Yizhan into revealing my true identity just now, the consequences would have been disastrous. This guy Lu Yizhan is mysterious, unpredictable, and cunning. He doesn't know who he is. Maybe Lu Yizhan's name is fake. This world of god-killing insects is really crouching tiger, hidden dragon. The only thing that made Xiaopingan feel at ease was that Lu Yizhan didn't seem to want his own life, but had other plans. His life was not worried for the time being, and Lu Yizhan was sure that there was nothing he could do with the soul-stealing goo. Just gave myself a glimmer of hope. After standing on the street for a while, Xiaopinggan looked dejected, blended into the crowd, and walked aimlessly on the street. After walking for a while, Xiaopinggan asked people on the street about hotels in the city, and then walked towards the east side of the city. It didn't take long to reach the east side of the city. There is a luxury hotel in the city, built on a beach and a reef, close to the sea. The hotel's courtyard is also a single-family house, and there are also places such as secret training rooms. Xiaopinggan chose it after paying the room fee for 3 days. A yard near the seaside temporarily settled down. In the living room of the villa, Xiaopinggan drank tea, listened to the sound of waves outside, and closed his eyes. At about the same time, Xiaopinggan's god of fortune boy followed the masters of the blood demon cult and arrived at a courtyard on the mountain to the east of the city. The members of the blood demon sect gathered here were only seen by the god of fortune. There were hundreds of them in one hall. The lord of the Golden Moon Palace, who has an evil and handsome face, is in this villa. When the 6 members of the blood demon cult returned to the villa, the master of the Golden Moon Palace was leaning on a soft bed, playing with a skull made of gold and gems in his hand. There were 2 summoned people beside him. The maid was pouring wine for him and peeling the grapes. Reporting to the lord of the palace, "We searched the city several times today, but the mirror still showed no response, and no trace of Xiaopinggan was found. We also heard news that the Abyss Insect King raided the Immortal City, the Immortal City of the Wanshen section. It has been destroyed by the Zerg, and many disciples of the Wanshen sect escaped from the underground at night and returned to Yundeopiao Miao Mountain." "Oh, really?" The Lord of Jinyu Palace sat up suddenly and squinted his eyes. "From today on, keep an eye on Wanshen section. The leader just sent an order. The center of the heaven and earth vision where the Saint Master was born is not far away. The Dead Sea, that vision is related to Xiaopinggan. Around the Dead Sea, only the Holy Master World Pearl of the Wanshen sect has the most. Xiaopinggan has most likely been mixed into the Wanshen section according to the leader's instructions. We must find out the Wanshen sect in the former Immortal City. Don't miss any situation where you have merged with the disciples of the Holy Master. The leader will soon be able to get rid of the entanglement of the Wolf King and rush to the Sea of Immortality. As long as that Xiaopinggan is still in the Sea of Immortality, we will definitely be able to find him." The god of fortune boy walked around the villa, and after finding nothing else, he disappeared in a flash. Xiaopinggan in the secret room suddenly opened his eyes. His mouth felt a little dry, and he was slightly frightened. He didn't expect that he would be exposed so quickly. "Fortunately, I met those disciples of the blood demon sect today, otherwise, I might still be kept in the dark. This Sea of Immortals has quietly become a storm, and the new disciples of the Wanshen sect have actually become the key targets of the blood demon sect's investigation. According to the blood demon sect's methods, if Nezumotion comes, he may have to become the turtle in the urn. I had underestimated the blood demon sect and Zemotion before, thinking that by joining the Wanshen sect I could fish in troubled waters without anyone noticing. Little did I know that the crisis had quietly arrived." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 483. Fortune-telling and fortune-telling, I am a fool. Come to me, Lu Bangxian, for only 100 gold coins. Lu Yazan was still walking around the streets of the city, shouting words. Nothing unusual could be seen. There was actually a summoner in the middle who asked Lu Yazan to tell his fortune. The god of fortune boy followed Lu Yushuan for a while and found nothing else, and then returned directly to the hotel where Xiaopinggan was staying. As soon as the god of fortune boy came back, Xiaopinggan opened his eyes, and the god of fortune boy returned directly to the secret mandala. Lu Yazan thought that he had been infected by the soul-stealing goo, and he was not worried about running away. His life and death were completely under his control, so he was not in a hurry. Perhaps, he had other ways to inquire and confirm Kui Li's affairs. The blood demon cult, Lu Yazan, interesting. Xiaoping'an rubbed his face and thought for a while, then his eyes flashed and he entered the secret room of the hotel. Xiaoping'an, who came to the secret room, sat cross-legged on the futon on the stone bed. He took out the tortoise-shell 5 elements inverted Bagua sword formation disc that was already somewhat incomplete but could still be used. He first protected the secret room, and then Xiaoping'an closed his eyes. Making a series of complicated hand seals of the clone technique with both hands. The secret method of clone in the Holy Soul Palace of the Spirit Realm is not a single secret method. To be precise, the secret method of clone is a collection of secret methods composed of a series of secret methods. For example, the previous soul power barrier and the art of fetal breath divine silence, etc. are all of course. The most important part of the secret method of clone is the separation, union, and transformation of the spirit body and the physical body. The last time Xiaoping'an was hit by the soul-seizing goo, he had not yet mastered the secret method of clones, but this time, he had already mastered the secret method of clones. His whole person was different, and Xiaoping'an had carefully studied the soul-seizing goo. The reason why the soul-stealing goo is so terrifying is that once it enters the human body, it is almost impossible to take it out of the possessed person. It can easily make people want to die. That is because this thing disappears after it enters the human body. It is almost impossible to find it by dissection, and the so-called soul-seizing is to control and attach to the human spirit body. Once the ordinary summoner is infected by the soul-seizing goo, he can only wait to die. Unfortunately, Lu Yazan met Xiaoping'an. The reason why Xiaoping'an swallowed the soul-stealing goo just now was just a temporary measure to temporarily show weakness to the enemy and confuse Lu Yazan. Under Xiaoping'an's secret method, he quickly saw the current state of the soul-seizing goo. At this moment, the soul-stealing goo has turned into a spirit body, and like a leech, it is entrenched in the Tanzong point on the chest of Xiaoping'an's spirit body. Bugs can have different forms of existence. For example, ordinary bugs look like two completely different creatures before they grow wings and after they grow wings. Bugs can also transform into the forms of animals and plants. This soul-stealing goo can complete the transformation between the physical body and the spiritual body. Ordinary summoners, even in the 8-yang realm or the 9-yang realm, are helpless against the parasites attached to the spirit body. After determining the location of the soul-stealing goo, a bright golden light suddenly appeared on Xiaoping'an, who was sitting cross-legged on the futon. In the golden light, a golden figure separated from Xiaoping'an's body, stood up, and stood on the golden figure. On the figure's chest, there was the light and shadow of a soul-stealing goo adsorbed there, and then the golden figure made a soul barrier handprint on his hand. The light flashed on the spirit body, and the barrier appeared. The soul-stealing goo started to squirm all of a sudden, and it felt difficult to absorb. Then the spirit stretched out his hand, gently grabbed the soul-stealing goo, and easily took the soul-stealing goo from his chest and wrapped it with a ball of soul power. Live. Later, the golden spirit body merged with Xiaoping'an's body again. Xiaoping'an, who had his eyes closed, opened his eyes, opened his mouth gently, and saw the soul-stealing goo wrapped in a ball of soul power exuding a faint golden light. It was like a spherical object the size of a marble, and Xiaoping'an spit it out from his mouth. Come out. The soul-seizing goo wrapped in soul power was still in a spirit state. To the soul-seizing goo, it thought it was still attached to Xiaoping'an's spirit body and there was nothing abnormal about it. Holding the soul power ball wrapped with the soul-stealing goo in his hand, Xiaoping'an dropped another drop of blood from his fingertips onto the ball. The ball absorbed the drop of blood at once, and there was it lost its actual form and turned into blood red, looking like a piece of blood amber, and in the blood amber was the soul-stealing goo that thought it was attached to Xiaoping'an's body. There is nothing abnormal about the soul-stealing goo. Similarly, as the master of the soul-stealing goo, there is absolutely no abnormality. This blood amber containing the soul-stealing goo cannot be put into the space warehouse of the secret mandala. Because it is alive, it can only be carried with you. Xiaopingan picked up the soul blood amber with 2 fingers, put it in front of his eyes and looked at it carefully. In the blood amber, the soul-stealing goo in the spirit state appeared in detail, like a weak caterpillar, but with a chilling and terrifying atmosphere. Oh, I didn't expect that I would have to change my body again so soon. It seems that I can't stay in this immortal sea for much longer, and the Wanchen sect can't hang out anymore. The secret transformation world bead that Mr. Jing prepared for himself, it really comes in handy. Without the secret method of transformation, I probably wouldn't be able to survive for more than a few days in this god-killing insect world. Looking at the soul blood amber in his hand, Xiaopingan sighed helplessly. Xiaopingan is still a little reluctant to leave the Wanchen section. He has not fully explored the value of the Wanchen sect, which is equivalent to interrupting all his previous plans. However, he cannot leave because he has been exposed by integrating the Saint Master World Pearl. Xingzang, Xuanhuan has already set his sights on the Wanchen sect, and has even guessed a lot of things. Even if he can transform, he is still too dangerous in the Wanchen sect, and Xuanhuan might come looking for him at some point. Lu Yizhuan can identify his identity because he has been in contact with him before. He should rely on some very rare special abilities to identify acquaintances, rather than being able to see through the secret method of his own transformation. Lu Yizhuan's ability should be he could only detect it when he was close to him at a certain distance in space. If he looked at it from a distance, he couldn't detect it. This was the case just now on the street. He only discovered the abnormality when he was close to him. This ability is a bit like that of a black dragon. As long as he doesn't get close to Lu Yizhuan, that guy shouldn't be able to discover his secret. After going over what happened in his mind, Xiaopingan thought for a moment, put the soul blood amber on the table next to him, and began to transform again using the secret method of transformation. As the muscles and bones of Xiaopingan's body squirmed and changed, a moment later, Xiaopingan's height grew an inch taller, his skin became slightly darker, his eyes became smaller, and his eyebrows were thick and dark, with a hint of evil aura. He had completely changed. One person. Xiaopingan summoned Wang Zhejian. Wang Zhejian held a brand new set of black mage robes in his hands. He helped Xiaopingan change into clothes in the secret room and rearranged Xiaopingan's appearance and hairstyle. In a moment, Xiaopingan had already turned into an ordinary-looking young man in his 20s. It is indeed much more convenient and easier to have a beautiful woman help organize it than Xiaopingan himself. My lord, this secret method of transformation is really interesting. In the blink of an eye, you become a different person. I wonder what your lord is going to name this time. Wang Zhejian carefully helped Xiaopingan straighten the collar of the mage's robe and asked with a smile. Xiaopingan rubbed his face, and a name flashed in his mind, let's call him Luoan. After completing the transformation, Wang Zhejian resigned and returned to the secret mandala. Xiaopingan put the soul blood amber in his pocket, then put away the formation disc and walked out of the secret room. As soon as he arrived in the yard outside, Xiaopingan picked a few leaves, rose into the air, and disappeared into the air in the blink of an eye, using illusions to hide his figure. Xiaopingan did not leave directly, but flew towards the villa where the blood demon sect's stronghold was located. When he was still 4 or 5 kilometers away from the villa, Xiaopingan stopped in the air, cast a blinding spell, completely hiding his figure in the air, and then summoned the Chen-Seeing assassin to take the star with him. The soul blood amber turned into a black smoke, fell from the sky, and quickly sneaked towards the villa where the blood demon sect was located. The villa where the blood demon cult is entrenched is on guard, but the level of vigilance is not high. There are only 2 summoners of the blood demon cult wandering outside the villa. For the Chen-Seeing assassins, hiding is their best skill. Moreover, Xiaopingan didn't want the Chen-Seeing assassin to sneak into the villa to do something earth-shattering. He just asked the Chen-seeing assassin to infiltrate into the villa to do a trivial thing. Outside the villa, there is a dense pine forest and a river. The sinking star assassin, carrying the soul blood amber, swims upstream from the river. Like a shadow of nothingness, he easily arrives outside the villa. As he approaches, under a tall century-old pine on the wall of the villa, a hole was quietly dug, the soul blood amber was buried in the ground, and then he quickly returned. Lu Yizhuan could roughly sense the location and area where the soul-seizing goo was. Therefore, just hide the soul blood amber near the villa of the blood demon sect's stronghold. Later, Xiaopingan was waiting to watch the show. Kui Li has no intersection with the blood demon section. The one who has an intersection with the blood demon sect is Xiaopingan. Once Lu Yizhan discovers that the location of his soul-stealing goo is the villa where the blood demon cult is entrenched, and Kui Li loses his freedom of movement, what will Lu Yizhan think? At that time, Lu Yizhuan instantly knew that Kui Li was Xiaopingan, and Xiaopingan was Kui Li. His initial guess was completely correct. He was on the street at that time, and Kui Li was indeed avoiding the blood demon sect. But he was blinded. The opportunity to become a god slipped through his fingers in vain. Xiaopingan really wanted to see Lu Yizhan beating his chest and stamping his feet. The reward given by the dominant demon is that if Xiaopingan can be sacrificed or killed, then the person who kills Xiaopingan can directly become a god or condense an immortal body. Can Lu Yizhan refuse such a temptation? Xiaopingan didn't think so. Lu Yizhan had been staring at the blood demon sect before, and he probably had other thoughts. When the time comes, just watch Lu Yizhan and the blood demon sect dog eat dog here, and just sit on the mountain and watch the dog fight. Not long after, the Chen-seeing assassin came back. Xiaopingan put away the Chen-seeing assassin, and once again released the God of Fortune boy to stare at the villa where the blood demon cult was hiding. He immediately escaped quickly and left Yundao directly. When he came to Yundao, he was far away. He stopped on a small island 100 miles away. This was almost the furthest distance from the God of Fortune boy. Xiaopingan was sitting cross-legged on a peak on the island, facing the moonlight, blowing the sea breeze, listening to the waves, drinking wine, eating dried meat, waiting for the drama on Yun Island to begin. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 484. This is a wanted order for Kui Li issued by the Immortal City headquarters. It was sent to us some time ago. According to the wanted order, Kui Li is an outer disciple who has just joined the Immortal City. During the operation together, he and two other outer disciples who were hunting Zerg in the abyss together discovered a top-quality Horcrux. In order to monopolize the Horcrux, Kui Li killed people to seize the treasure, and then fled. His nature was extremely evil, so this wanted order has a reward of 210,000 gold coins came to capture him. After being wanted, Kui Li fled and disappeared, never to be seen again. In the dim tavern, there was a lamp on the table. A summoner wearing a grey cloak who hid himself in the shadow of the light placed a not-so-new wanted notice on the table and handed it to Lu Yizhan. There was a small jug and 2 wine glasses in front of the two of them, and there were several dishes of side dishes to go with the wine on the table. There were only a few drinkers in the entire tavern, and there were only a few guests drinking on 2 tables near the door. Liquor. Everyone has cast a silent barrier, and no outsiders can hear what they are talking about. At this time, it was already late at night, and it would be dawn in a few hours. There were not many pedestrians on the street, and even the sharks setting up stalls had returned to the sea. Really? Lu Yuqian took a look at the content on the wanted notice, and it was exactly the same as what Kui Li said. It seemed that Kui Li had indeed not lied to him. Lu Yizhan nodded with satisfaction, took out a small medicine bottle from the space equipment and handed it over. The man in the grey cloak took the medicine bottle, looked at the elixir inside, and nodded. As an old customer of our Wan Baotang, I can also tell you news for free. The immortal city of the Wanchen sect was destroyed by the abyss yesterday. After the insect king is destroyed, it may not take long for the Wanchen sect to withdraw from the underground fortress in the Immortal Sea. Several Nine Sun Realm powerhouses in the Immortal Sea will take some actions and will not allow the Abyss Insect King to come to the surface. The two elders of the Wanchen sect have already rushed towards the Sea of Immortality. Liu Yuqian narrowed his eyes. Okay, thank you, I understand. The man in the grey cloak put away the bottle, then stood up and left. He walked out of the door of the tavern and disappeared into the dark streets outside in the blink of an eye, disappearing without a trace. Lu Yushuan was the only one left on the table. Lu Yizan drank by himself until he finished the wine, then threw a few gold coins on the table and walked out of the tavern. At this time, there were few pedestrians on the street, and Lu Yizan stopped shouting. Although this is a city that never sleeps, most summoners still have the habit of resting at night. 2 million gold coins. Kui Li's secret transformation method is of great use. It is far more than just 2 million gold coins. Lu Yizan murmured to himself while walking on the street. He didn't fully believe Kui Li's words before, but it doesn't matter. Kui Li has been infected by his soul-stealing goo. He will never be able to escape from his grasp in the future. He can only become one of his chess pieces, whether he lives or dies. It's up to you to decide. Kui Li's secret method of transformation came from a secret orbital world bead that no one had ever fused. His ability to transform was so terrifying that he couldn't even see any flaws. For countless years, I heard that no one could successfully fuse the secret orbital world bead, but Kui Li managed to fuse it successfully. This was such a coincidence, so that boy may not have told the truth to him. There was still a lot in his belly. Secret, in the future, you can slowly squeeze out all the secrets and value of that kid like oil. Well, as for now, that boy's secret transformation method is still useful, let yourself think about it. The young master of Duoking Valley was plotted by him and died unexpectedly. Over the years, Duoking Valley has been leaderless. If that boy Kui Li transforms into the young master of Duoking Valley and returns to Duoking Valley, will he be able to seize the property of Duoking Valley? Duoking Valley guards a sacred spring in the Five Yang realm. There is also Dugu Xian, the head of the Dugu family in Tianyu Prefecture, who is crazy. He has not been heard from since the last time he entered the secret realm of the void. If that kid transforms into Dugu Xian, I wonder if he can get the Dugu family's secret vault. Lu Yizan was thinking about various possibilities in his head, and he couldn't help but show a proud smile on his face. The world laughed at him for being so down and out, but who knew that Lu Yizan always controlled the world, with countless chess pieces, not to mention a mere gold coin? On the road to becoming a god in the future, there will be the footprints left by Lu Yizhuan. Thinking in his heart, Lu Yizan came to Chunfeng Tower. Chunfeng Tower is a large inn and a large restaurant. It is a gathering place for the 3 religions and 9 streams in the city. Because consumption is relatively cheap, summoners who don't have much money like to live in this kind of place where they can live and eat. 2 strings of red lanterns were hung at the entrance of Chunfeng building. In the middle of the night, there were still people eating and drinking in Chunfeng building, and people came and went from time to time. Ha, Lu Bangxian is here. He must have made a lot of money in the city today. The shopkeeper of Chunfeng Tower couldn't help but joked when he saw Lu Yi signed back. Lu Yizan's face changed in the blink of an eye. I'm ashamed, I'm ashamed. I just earned a little money for the wine. I've already drunk it in my stomach. Shopkeeper, do you want to come and tell me? I'll give you a 30% discount. You only need to pay for it. I'll just pay for the rent in a few days. Haha, I won't forget it, forget it. The shopkeeper waved his hand quickly. It's a pity, it's a pity. Lu Yushuan shook his head and returned to his room. As soon as he returned to the room, Lu Yuqian poured himself some tea and drank it. At the same time, he picked up a finger and activated the soul-stealing goo in Kui Li's stomach. From Lu Yizan's point of view, as soon as he urged Kui Li to have an unbearable abdominal pain, he would rush to Chunfeng Tower to see him in a short time. In fact, he didn't want to explain anything to Kui Li, he just wanted Kui Li to develop the habit of reverence and obedience to him. Just like Yao Ying, he only wanted Kui Li to understand that his life was in his control at all times. In the middle, he had to accept his fate obediently, and then he could use it later. This was a method of using soul-stealing goo to control people, and Lu Yizhan was already familiar with it. After 2 minutes of urging, Lu Yizhan stopped urging him. He just drank tea quietly and waited. It's just that time passed by second by second. After half an hour, all the tea on the table was drunk, and Kui Li still didn't arrive. Lu Yizhan's expression changed slightly. He closed his eyes and sensed the seizure. Soul goo, the soul-stealing goo, was still within his induction. It was only a few dozen miles away from him, just to the southeast, not too far away. What happened? Could it be that the force he used to activate the soul-stealing goo just now wasn't enough? If it were an ordinary summoner, that move just now would have been enough to make people roll on the ground. Lu Yushuan lowered his face and continued to push for a minute. The pain doubled and gave Kui Li a splitting headache. Then he sat and waited. After more than 20 minutes, Kui Li still didn't come. Yizhuan closed his eyes again and sensed the soul-stealing goo. This time, Lu Yizhan's expression completely changed. The location of the soul-stealing goo was the same as before, with no change at all. How is this going? Lu Yizhan's face was gloomy, and he walked around the room twice with his hands behind his back. Finally, he opened the window of the room, and his whole body turned into a light smoke, which floated directly out of the window and flew towards the place where he sensed the soul-stealing goo. He passed by, using secret techniques to cover his figure on the way. The dozens of miles on the island were actually not that far for him. Lu Yizhan sensed the direction of the soul-stealing goo and flew towards that direction. As he was flying, Lu Yizhan's expression changed. It changed again, because the location of the soul-stealing goo seemed to be a little close to the place where the blood demon cult was entrenched on Yun Island. He had followed the whereabouts of the blood demon cult people before, so he naturally knew the people of the blood demon cult. Where to gather? Perhaps, this is a coincidence. Lu Yizhan comforted himself like this and continued to fly forward. A few minutes later, standing in the sky 4 or 5 kilometers away from the villa where the blood demon sect was entrenched, Lu Yizhan's figure was completely stunned as if he had been struck by lightning. Within this distance, he could already see clearly. He felt that his soul-stealing goo was in the direction of the villa where the blood demon cult was entrenched, and the two locations completely overlapped. What does this mean? Why did Kui Li come to the villa where the blood demon sect was located, and why didn't he even leave when he activated the soul-stealing goo to make him miserable? If Kui Li could move freely, he wouldn't grit his teeth and endure that kind of pain for no reason. Unless Kui Li cannot move freely, his body is completely restricted, and he is completely unable to move, unable to leave the villa where the blood demon cult is entrenched. This is the only possibility. So, the question is, why did the people of the blood demon cult detain Kui Li for no reason? Lu Yizhan was thinking about it when his body suddenly trembled, his eyes suddenly widened, and two frightening lights burst out, staring at the villa where the blood demon sect was entrenched. Unless Kui Li was Xia Li Pingan, the masters of the blood demon sect discovered Xia Pingan and arrested Xia Pingan. Recalling the scene where he saw Kui Li avoiding the masters of the blood demon sect on the street, Lu Yizhan felt that he suddenly understood it completely, and his whole mind was suddenly excited. "Pa, you idiot, you were actually deceived by a kid, and the boat capsized in the gutter." Lu Yizhan was extremely annoyed and slapped himself hard, and looked at the villa where the blood demon cult was entrenched again. His eyes instantly looked like as if he was congested, his breathing became heavy. At this moment, Lu Yizhan was like a tough guy and a pauper looking at a lottery ticket that could win 100 million gold coins. He originally bought it, but he gave it away casually and threw it aside. The soul-seizing Gu can still sense, which means that Kui Li. No, it's Xiaopingan, which means that Xiaopingan is still alive. Zhu Motion hasn't arrived at Yundao yet. Those masters of the blood demon sect may want to wait for Zhu Motion to hand over Xiaopingan to Zhu Motion. However, during this period, accidents may happen at any time, because of the killing and blood sacrifice of Xiaopingan. Few summoners can resist the benefits that peace can bring. It is the temptation of becoming a god and condensing an immortal body. As long as he sacrifices blood to Xiaopingan, he can surpass Zhu Motion, become a god first, and condense the divine will. When the time comes, it is not certain who will be called ancestor. The people guarding Xiaopingan may kill or sacrifice Xiaopingan at any time. The opportunity is right in front of you, the situation is extremely urgent, what should you do? Looking at the villa where the blood demon cult was entrenched in the distance, Lu Yizhan's face became more and more ferocious and terrifying, and his heart was full of thoughts of becoming a god. The person sitting here is the master of the Golden Moon Palace, a strong man in the 8 Yang realm, and he may not have the possibility of winning. However, if you delay, the opportunity in front of you may be completely missed. At this moment, the master of Jinyu Palace may have been preparing for the blood sacrifice ceremony for Xiaopingan, so he did not leave Yundao in time. Even if it only takes a minute, the situation here may change fundamentally, causing you to miss this opportunity forever. You only have one chance, fight for it. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 485. For the members of the blood demon sect who were gathering in the villa at this moment, and even the master of Jinyu Palace, they never thought that suddenly, a thunderbolt from the clear sky would hit their heads. Lu Yizhan's speed was too fast and too ruthless. With determination, his figure loomed in the air. In a few flashes, he had already reached the sky above the villa, revealing his figure in an instant. Who is it, above the villa? A master from the 6th Sun realm of the blood demon sect who was on sentry duty suddenly noticed that there was an uninvited guest in the sky. He just asked, in a place like Cloud Island, there are so many masters. There will occasionally be masters flying over the villa, so the people on guard are not too nervous. But the next second, the eyes of the 6th Sun realm master from the blood demon cult showed a look of horror. Because he saw 3 horizontal lines appearing in the sky, and suppressed them directly with the terrifying power of God. Of those 3 horizontal lines, the upper 2 horizontal lines are continuous and represent Yang, and the bottom horizontal line is interrupted and represents Yin. If Xiaopingan is here, you will know that it is a Sun hexagram. Lu Yizhan didn't explain at all, he just stared at the entire villa with his eyes blazing, gritted his teeth, and his face as ferocious as iron. As soon as he made a move, he used all his strength, like a mountain to crush the top, without leaving any room. The green wind blew down from the sky. The master of the blood demon sect who was on guard did not even have a chance to resist. The clothes, flesh, and bones all over his body were like sand blown away by the strong wind. They were instantly weathered and turned into sand. The items in the space equipment also exploded. The gold coins, equipment, medicine bottles, etc. that exploded from the space equipment also turned into sand a little bit in the warm blue breeze. The 8-wheeled sun rose directly from behind Lu Yushuan, and the green wind was like layers of green gauze. It instantly enveloped the entire villa of the blood demon sect, making it so tight that not even an ant could escape. The cyan wind began to become violent, and in that violent wind, everything became extremely slow. What happened? 7 or 8 masters of the blood demon sect in the 6th Sun realm jumped out of the house in the villa, and their bodies froze in the air. They were blown by the cyan wind, and their bodies instantly turned into sand and were blown away. The body protecting spells of several more blood demon cult masters from the 6th Yang realm who flew out shattered and turned into flying sand in the wind. The green wind blew through several tall osmanthus trees in the villa, and the osmanthus trees turned into sand and dispersed. The green wind blew through the houses in the villa, roofs, tiles, walls, all these things turned into sand. The sand is dissipating, like relics that have been weathered for millions of years. This process may seem long, but it is actually very fast. From the time Liu Yishan took action to the present, it happened in the blink of an eye. Boom! A secret room in the villa exploded, like a volcano erupting. The figure of the master of the Golden Moon Palace flew out from the secret room. The face of the originally evil and handsome master of the Golden Moon Palace was ashen. Seeing the cyan wind blowing towards him, the master of the Golden Moon Palace did not even think about it. The same 8 rounds of scorching sun flew up from behind, 3 horizontal lines appeared on the head, and a diffuse golden water was on the cyan. Roared in the wind. Who are you? The face of the Lord of the Blood Demon Sect's Golden Moon Palace has become very terrifying at this moment. His eyes are blood red, and there are scales on his originally handsome face, making him look extremely ugly. As soon as he opens his mouth, the voice roars violently. Like a madman. The master of the Golden Moon Palace was furious, because right under his eyes, he saw the masters of the Blood Demon Sect in the villa dissipating into sand one by one under Liu Yizhan's domain. In the domain space of the 8 Yang realm strongmen, other masters and strong men in the 7 Yang realm and 6 Yang realm can only be ruthlessly crushed. The masters of the 6 Sun realm of the Blood Demon Sect dissipated one by one in fear and helplessness in front of the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace. Only a few masters of the 7 Sun realm were still struggling to hold on, but they were also shaky, but seemingly it can't last much longer. To the masters of the Blood Demon Sect in the villa, the situation in front of them is like a group of people sitting at home, sleeping, and then suddenly a person comes flying up and starts to detonate the explosives on him without saying a word. He won't give it to you at all. Any reaction time? Hand over Xiaopingan. Liu Yizhan roared in the air. At this time, Liu Yizhan didn't look cautious at all. Instead, he was extremely domineering, with golden light flashing all over his body, and his eyes were like lightning. Upon hearing Liu Yizhan's words, the master of the Golden Moon Palace felt that he suddenly understood what the guy in front of him was most likely an accomplice of Xiaopingan. Even if he was not an accomplice of Xiaopingan, he was also an enemy of the Blood Demon section. I want to interfere with him and ruin his good deeds. Looking at the elite backbones of the Blood Demon sect who died under Liu Yizhan's domain one by one, there is no room for relaxation in the face of such a deadly enemy. Either you die or I live. The master of the Golden Moon Palace is too lazy to talk nonsense, but roared angrily, "Die to me." As soon as he finished speaking, the violent golden water swept up from the ground and spread toward the sky. The words of the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace gave Liu Yushuan another feeling. The Blood Demon sect really refused to give up on Xiaopingan and had no choice but to fight. The green wind blows through the golden water, and the golden water disperses and closes and disperses again, and is difficult to be blown away by the strong wind. The golden water filled the air toward Liu Yushuan. Amidst the strong wind, water spouts appeared one after another on the golden water. 2 completely different forces were fighting fiercely, making it difficult to distinguish. The domain spaces of the 2 8 Yang realm powerhouses collided fiercely in the villa. The master of the Golden Moon Palace had no choice. Facing Liu Yizhan's domain space, he could only fight against it by using his own domain space. Other methods were useless. If he hesitated and didn't go all out, he would be the one who died. And under the squeeze and collision of the domain space of the 2 strong men, the remaining masters of the Blood Demon sect in the villa were miserable. Originally, those people had difficulty facing the domain of a strong person in the 8 Yang realm, let alone 2. When 2 giant elephants were wrestling, the short animals on the ground were undoubtedly the worst. The giant elephants squeezed and stepped on them, and were trampled to death. No, Palace Master. An old man from the 7 Sun realm of the Blood Demon sect watched the golden light that protected him collapse. He just screamed and shouted towards the Palace Master of the Golden Moon Palace. his upper body he was blown by the cyan wind and turned into sand in the blink of an eye, while his lower body was swept by the golden water. It was like melting ice and dissipated in the blink of an eye. The master of the Golden Moon Palace can't control that much anymore. The dead old man was his powerful altar master. But at this time, if he hesitates, he will die, and his own life and the lives of others will be the same. Between lives, the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace could only choose to save his own life first. The masters of the Seven Sun Realm were unable to persevere in the collision between the two realms, let alone the other masters of the Blood Demon cult of the Six Sun Realm. Wherever the water spout struck, all the Six Sun Realm and Seven Sun Realm masters of the Blood Demon sect in the villa were wiped out in an instant, and no one survived. Seeing this situation, the eyes of the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace spurted blood. The first batch of master elites he brought to the Immortal Sea were all destroyed here. If Xuanhuan knew that this was a heavy responsibility, he would never get the good fruit from him. If he could no longer answer the question without killing the man in front of him to atone for his sins. As for Lu Yizhan, watching the masters and elites of the Blood Demon sect in the villa being destroyed in the collision between the two, he became more and more firm in his guess that the master of the Golden Moon Palace was determined to swallow up the blood sacrifice. Xiaoping'an, the death of these people from the Blood Demon sect may have played into the hands of the master of the Golden Moon Palace. The opportunity to become a god is right in front of us, the master of the Golden Moon Palace cannot be allowed to succeed. Conferred God. Conferred God. Lu Yizhan's mind was filled with the idea of becoming a god. Even if he settled for the next best thing, even if Xiaoping'an was to die, he could only die in his own hands. Only by killing him could he obtain immortality. Hand over Xiaoping'an. Lu Yizhan roared again. He bit the tip of his tongue and spurted out a mouthful of blood on top of the scorching sun rising behind him. The scorching sun suddenly turned blood red and rumbled. It fell towards the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace, as if the sky was falling. Crazy. The face of the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace also changed. This was because he was using his original blood to stimulate the power of the eight yangs in the domain. The Lord of Jinyu Palace also bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood onto the scorching sun behind him. 2 rounds of scorching sun collided fiercely in the domain space. In just one moment, Lu Yizhan and the master of Jinyu Palace were bleeding from all their orifices at the same time. Their faces were terrifying and as miserable as ghosts. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 486. Strong, very strong, too strong. This is how Xiaoping'an feels about Lu Yizhan's battle with the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace. Although Xiaoping'an was hundreds of miles away from the battlefield, through the God of Fortune Boy, he was able to completely watch the battle between Lu Yizhan and the Master of the Golden Moon Palace, as if he was watching it at close range. This was Xiaoping'an's first time to observe so closely the scene of a strong person of the same level in the 8 Yang realm releasing the domain space to fight. Xiaoping'an saw with his own eyes that during the collision between the two realms, the elite masters of the 6 Yang realm of the Blood Demon sect turned into flying sand and blood foam one by one, dissipating little by little in front of his eyes. This wave, the Blood Demon sect has definitely suffered heavy losses. Those elite masters above the 6 Yang realm of the Blood Demon sect, if they were not in the world of god-killing insects, any of them would be the masters and backbones of their own side. But at this moment, under the absolute strength gap, those people were signed by Lu Yi. They made a surprise attack, were caught off guard, and were directly crushed by the domain. Lu Yizhan's ruthlessness was beyond Xiaoping'an's expectation. Looking at Lu Yizhan's ferocious face, Xiaoping'an knew that this was Lu Yizhan's true face. In order to become stronger and become a god, he would do whatever it takes. Being able to trample all the rules in the world and challenge all behemoths, This ruthlessness is also the temperament of many strong people. The three horizontal lines full of the power of heaven and earth that appear on Lu Yi's head are the Xuanhuan, which represents wind. The three horizontal lines that appear on the head of the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace are a DUI hexagram, and the DUI hexagram represents Z. The battle between Lu Yizan and the Lord of Jinyu Palace was so fierce that outsiders might not be able to tell the secret. However, while Xiaoping'an watched, his brain was running rapidly, calculating and judging the situation on the battlefield. Lu Yizan he and the Lord of Jinyu Palace seemed to be equally powerful, but Xiaoping'an felt that Lu Yizan might lose. Because Xiaoping'an judged that Lu Yizan's domain would be completely restrained by the domain of the Lord of Jinyu Palace later on. The Sun hexagram is wind. From the five elements perspective, the five elements of wind belong to wood, and the DUI hexagram is Z. However, the five elements belong to metal, and metal overcomes wood. In terms of attributes, the domain of the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace just restrains Lu Yizan's domain. It is estimated that before taking action, Lu Yizan did not know that the domain of Jinyu Palace Master would be able to completely restrain himself. If the battle situation is unfavorable, in terms of the influence of the domain on the summoner, the direction of the Xuanhuan points to the southeast. The favorable direction of the domain space generated by the Xuanhuan is the southeast. There is a high probability that Lu Yizan will start from the southeast of Yun Island. Escape in the direction that is most beneficial to him. Although the battle was not over yet, as soon as Xiaoping'an's head completed such calculations and judgments, he instantly recalled the God of Fortune Boy, and then he flew up from the island. After becoming invisible, he used all his strength to fly quickly towards the southeast. The God of Fortune Boy plunged into the sea and conveyed the underwater terrain conditions to Xiaoping'an. If Lu Yizan is defeated and flees from the southeast, he will definitely not reveal his whereabouts and goals in the air. In the end, he will definitely choose an easy hiding place in the sea to hide to escape the possible revenge and pursuit of the Blood Demon cult. I will look at the situation and ambush in the southeast in advance to see if I can catch the big fish Lu Yizan. In terms of danger, Lu Yizan now poses more of a threat to him than the Lord of Jinyu Hall. The Blood Demon Sect's facial mirror magic weapon has been unable to locate his whereabouts and can do nothing to him, but this guy Lu Yizan can recognize himself. This guy is too dangerous. Since this guy plots against you, don't blame yourself for being cruel. Half an hour later. Boom. In the domain, the sixth blazing sun entangled and collided together, and the violent and fiery divine power swept through the domain space of the two people like a burning hurricane. The skin on Lu Yizan's body has begun to crack, and the 36,000 pores in his body have begun to spurt out plasma. His whole body has become extremely miserable, like a person fished out of a pool of blood, with all the meridians and bones in his body broken. Quite a few. Compared to Lu Yizan, Jinyu Palace Master also looked miserable. Jinyu Palace Master spurted out a mouthful of old blood again, his hair was half grey and he was almost bald, but he was not as scary as Lu Yizan. At this moment, the entire villa has been razed to the ground, with no grass growing. The domain of the golden swamp behind the Master of Jinyu Palace is getting bigger and bigger, gushing out from the ground, filled with water vapor, and a huge golden vortex is forming in the domain. It has completely suppressed the green wind brought by Lu Yizan's Xuanhuan. The green wind was suppressed and was swallowed and absorbed by the rotating golden waves. The golden waves fluctuated and completely absorbed the green wind. The big swamp is spreading, and the cyan space is getting smaller and smaller. The swirling tornado was squeezing towards Lu Yizan, and most of the aftermath of the collision between the two men was rushing towards Lu Yizan. The area covered by the two people's domains is getting larger and larger, and has gradually exceeded the scope of the villa. It has completely raised the entire mountain to the ground, and it is also spreading towards the outside of the villa. The woods outside the villa are in the territory of Dui Gua. In the blink of an eye, it completely melted away. Suddenly, Lu Yushuan's expression suddenly changed. Because at this moment, he felt his soul seizing Gu let out its last cry as it died, and then the connection between him and his soul seizing Gu completely disappeared. The Lord of Jinyu Palace has killed Xiaopingan. Xiaopingan might be in the underground secret room of this villa, within the domain of the Lord of Jinyu Hall. But just now, his soul-stealing Gu died? What does that mean? This means that Xiaopingan is also dead. The Lord of Jinyu Palace may have used secret methods to complete the blood sacrifice, or simply killed Xiaopingan and made himself in vain. In fact, the Lord of Jinyu Palace had no idea what was happening, let alone the thoughts that were passing through Lu Yizan's head at this moment. The soul-stealing Gu is dead, but the soul-stealing Gu underground outside the villa. At this time, it finally couldn't withstand the influence of the two people's fields, and it suddenly became scum. Naturally, it died, leaving nothing behind. Lu Yizan became furious with embarrassment, angry and anxious, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from the tip of his heart again. The result of his falling out with the blood demon cult was actually to help the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace in front of him, and let the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace gather the divine will behind to become a god. Or get an eternal body. How can you have your own way of survival? Go to hell. Lu Yishao's bloody eyes opened in anger. As soon as he moved his hand, a purple-red oval sphere appeared in his hand. The sphere flashed with electric light, carrying a terrifying aura that destroyed everything. Void Divine Thunder. The Lord of Jinyu Palace was shocked and angry. He had seen many lunatics, but this was the first time he had seen a lunatic like this guy in front of him. This guy came here inexplicably today. Without saying a word, he used his domain to crush him, and asked him to hand over Xiaopingan. As soon as he came, he went all out and wiped out the elite backbone of the blood demon sect he brought. At this moment, he actually took out the Void Divine Thunder. Do you think you are the only one who has it? The master of Jinyu Palace also roared angrily and took out a Void Divine Thunder in his hand. The only thing that can resist the Void Divine Thunder is the Void Divine Thunder. In the hands of an expert, the direction of the release of the violent power of the Void Divine Thunder can be controlled to a certain extent and targeted. At this time, Xiaopingan had flown hundreds of kilometers, but the flash of terrifying aura coming from behind him still made Xiaopingan turn around and look in the direction of Yun Dao. In the sky in the direction of Yun Island, there was a sudden light, and a violent aura of divine power suddenly exploded. A ball of fire mixed with thousands of terrifying lightnings that illuminated the entire sky appeared over the island, starting with a line. And then the next second, it opened like a big blood-red umbrella, stretching for dozens of miles in the sky, making the sky and the earth light up instantly. The fire and thunder made the sea water conspicuous. The movement shocked Xiaopingan. Above Cloud Island, in front of the Lord of the Golden Moon Palace, a blood-red eye appeared. The blood-red eye was like a black hole, absorbing most of the power of the Void Divine Thunder that rushed towards him, but the Lord of Jinyu Hall was still affected by the terrifying power of Lu Yizan's Void Divine Thunder. One of his arms and one foot was suddenly gone, half of his body was broken, and his pale bones were exposed on an evilly handsome face. Lu Yizan was not having a good time there either. A broken golden shield stood in front of Lu Yizan. At this moment, Lu Yizan had no complete skin on his body, and the smaller half of his body was almost gone as well. The exposed skin on the remaining half of the body was completely carbonized. As Lu Yizan moved, the man in front of him, the golden shield, suddenly turned into powder and dissipated. The carbonized skin on his body suddenly shattered and fell from the air, revealing Lu Yizan's horrific body with bloody flesh under his skin, broken bones, burned muscles, and bleeding internal organs. Everything was clearly visible, the flesh and blood all over his body were blurred, and a vague electric light was still lingering around his body. Lu Yizan didn't leave a word. He gave the master of Jinyu Palace a hard look, then turned into a black shadow, flew toward the southeast, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The Lord of Jinyu Palace was also seriously injured. Looking at the direction in which Lu Yuxuan left, the Lord of Jinyu Palace did not pursue him, but gritted his teeth, and also turned into a streak of blood, flew towards the west, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The Lord of Jinyu Palace has never been afraid of anyone, but today, looking at Lu Yishao who was fighting with him like a madman, the Lord of Jinyu Palace was a little frightened for the first time in his heart. This kind of inexplicable use of his domain, anyone who encounters the void divine thunder and the desperate lunatic will be scared. Until now, the Lord of Jinyu Palace did not know the reason for this deadly battle tonight. On the ground, the entire villa has disappeared, and half of a mountain has disappeared. The fire and thunder in the sky lasted for several minutes before slowly dissipating. The summoners watching the battle on the island were all stunned and frightened. They had no idea what happened tonight and why a strong man of this level would be tempted to fight for his life at this time. Xiaoping'an dived from the air to the bottom of the water. This place is 700 to 800 kilometers away from Yundao. There is a large undersea mountain range under the water. There are deep valleys, cliffs, dark trenches, and dense undersea plants everywhere. If you want to hide, this would be a very suitable place. Xiaoping'an glanced at the environment here, and in the blink of an eye, he dived into a trench, searched for a while in the trench with a critical eye, and then picked a leaf from the flowers and plants in the trench. The shape slowly disappeared into the water, without any breath anymore. In less than an hour, there was an undercurrent in the sea water, and the water waves surged slightly. Lu Yizan finally appeared in the water, dragging his broken body like a skeleton. Almost as soon as Lu Yuxuan appeared, the god of fortune boy rushed over and followed Lu Yuxuan. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 487. Lu Yizan's body at this moment was surrounded by a water shield, almost like a skeleton pulled out from a fire scene, which was extremely miserable. After he appeared, he scanned the surrounding sea area, and then swam hard towards an underwater valley. His figure was swaying, and the two water shields protecting him were compressed to the extreme. He was a little unstable, and his whole body seemed to be unstable. Like it could fall apart at any moment. The valley is not very deep, and there are even deeper trenches around it. The valley is surrounded by towering undersea mountains. The undersea plants floating in the water make the undersea valley look very hidden. Suddenly, a gray-white giant shark more than 10 meters long emerged from a large piece of seaweed. With its ferocious teeth and fierce eyes, it rushed directly towards Lu Yizan. Lu Yizan's body was covered in blood and flesh. Although he was isolated by the water shield, a trace of his blood seemed to seep into the water, attracting the attention of the predators in the ocean. He was actually regarded as prey by a shark, and even this inconspicuous beast dared to bare his teeth at him at this moment. "You beast, you dare to come looking for death." Lu Yizan cursed angrily, raised his hand, and released an ice pick, shooting towards the shark. However, I don't know whether it was because the shark was too flexible in the sea, or because Lu Yizan's mental and divine power were already a little weak at the moment, and he lost his accuracy. The ice pick was originally intended to penetrate the shark's head and body, but in the end it just scraped. He flew past the shark's tail, leaving a gash more than 2 feet long in the shark's tail. The shark was injured and became even more violent. It bared its sharp teeth and bit Lu Yuxuan. Lu Yuxuan gritted his teeth and avoided the shark's attack. When the shark opened its mouth wide and rushed towards him for the second time, he shot out a second ice pick and stabbed it directly into the shark's mouth. The shark's mouth and body were pierced, bleeding, and slowly sank into the sea. Lu Yuxuan gasped and left quickly. After a while, he found a cave with fish swimming in the mountains on the seabed. The cave was more than 1 meter high and hidden behind a patch of rocks and water plants. It was very hidden. He swam directly into the cave. After entering the cave for 100 meters, the entrance of the cave extended upwards. After another 100 meters, the space inside the cave suddenly widened and turned into a slightly rugged gourd shape of holes. There is no other eyesore in this hollow, except for some rocks on the seabed and a few small luminous fishes. There is nothing else. Lu Yuxuan breathed a sigh of relief. He took out a flashing blue bead from the space equipment. As soon as the bead was taken out, the water in the cave and the swimming fish made a splash, like pushed and repulsed by invisible forces. They were all squeezed out of the cave at once. The entire cave suddenly became dry, even the stones were dry. A faint blue light enveloped the space of dozens of meters in the cave. This in the cave outside the space, there is sea water, but the sea water cannot flow in. Lu Yuxuan placed the waterproofing bead on a stone in the cave, then took out a bronze array plate, placed it at the entrance of the cave, activated it, and the entire cave suddenly changed. The mist covered the sea water outside. In the mist, a thick wall appeared around the cave. After doing this, the underground cave became the most secretive chamber. After doing this, Lu Yujian spit out the blood he was holding in his throat, sat down cross-legged on a clean stone in the cave, gasping for air, and didn't even have time to wipe the blood on the corner of his mouth. He just walked out of his pocket. Among the equipment, he took out a few pills and swallowed them, then closed his eyes and entered a state of trance, slowly waiting for his body to recover. In the battle with the Lord of Jinyu Palace, Lu Yizhuan had been seriously injured. Although he was not dead yet, his whole body and the secret mandala were close to the edge of collapse, especially in the last moment. Lu Yizhuan made a desperate move and took the after taking out the Void Divine Thunder. He did not expect that the Lord of Jinyu Palace also took out a Void Divine Thunder. The two of them blasted each other and were severely injured at the same time. If his body could still hold on, he would have run a little further before stopping, but right now, this was his best choice. The pills he had taken were indeed useful, but in just a moment, the skin on Lu Yizhan's broken body began to regenerate bit by bit, and the wounds that were bleeding and bursting stopped bleeding. Just 10 minutes later, Xiaopingan appeared outside the cave where Lu Yizhan was hiding. Xiaopingan was a little worried about Lu Yizhuan's combat power at this moment, but when Lu Yizhuan killed the shark just now, it suddenly became clear that Lu Yizhuan at this moment is probably not even 1% of the 8 Yang realm experts. He couldn't even use his abilities, and his whole body was seriously injured and weak. Now is the time to take advantage of your illness and kill you. This valley was chosen by Lu Yizhan. This guy is still so cunning. According to ordinary people's thinking, even if he fled here to hide, I am afraid that the nearby trenches are the best places to hide, but he did the opposite. Okay, I found a valley cave in an undersea mountain range to hide in a place that was not as deep and secluded as the ocean trench. If someone really came here to look for him, it would actually be even harder to find him here. Xiaopingan entered the cave and soon swam out of the cave where Lu Yizhan was hiding. Glowing little fish swim around in the water, as if there is an invisible wall, isolating the inside from the sea water. Behind the wall, there is rolling mist, making it difficult for people to see what is going on inside. Even if an ordinary summoner enters at this point, looking at the strange scene in front of me, I probably wouldn't dare to rush in rashly. Xiaopingan had no scruples and stepped into the mist with one step. Just as soon as his eyes blurred, everything Xiaopingan saw completely changed. On the head, there are huge and sharp ice picks. Thousands of ice picks hang down from the head, like sharp swords, ready to fall at any time, which is intimidating. On the ground, there was a blazing sea of fire. Ice and fire mingle here. Between the fire and the ice, there was a thick rolling mist. This was the situation in Lu Yuxuan's formation. Xiaopingan entered the formation, squinted his eyes, let out his senses, pinched his hands to make decisions, and made quick calculations. This is the ice and fire mysterious formation. Xiaopingan walked towards the Shenman in one step, and the ice cone in the sky and the burning flames on the ground approached instantly. No, as soon as the formation changed, Xiaopingan immediately discovered the changes in the passes and formation eyes in the formation. This formation also reversed the Qiju, closed the gate of life, used life as death, and used death as living. Join the trail is mysterious and the murderous intent is unpredictable. If someone who knows a little bit about the point formation method comes in, he will fall directly into the trap. More importantly, this array is divided into 2 layers. The last layer is the base of the 8-level golden lock, which reverses the gate of life and death again. If someone were to come to this formation again, even those who knew the formation would probably be trapped here. But unfortunately, this formation met Xiaopingan, an outstanding young man who was admired by Mr. Wolong. Kunlun formation, the descendant of collection of legal organs. Xiaopingan closed his eyes. After a few minutes, Xiaopingan reopened his eyes with a smile on his face. For an array master, breaking the array and constructing the array are both a pleasure. When you are breaking the array, you have already constructed, studied, and explored the opponent's formation in your head. The formation master who created this formation disk can be regarded as a top master, but he can still understand and decipher the changes in yin and yang of this formation disk. Then, Xiaopingan stepped into the blazing flames around him. An ice pick on his head suddenly dropped down, but it stopped 3 feet above Xiaopingan's head. The raging flames that swept over him were like encountering a nemesis. When Xiaopingan stepped out, wherever the footsteps landed, the flame disappeared. Xiaopingan walked out of the formation step by step, as if strolling in a courtyard. In just the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the firelight without any injuries. Just a few minutes later, Xiaopingan quickly stepped out of the formation in 1 step and appeared in the cave. Lu Yizhan was still sitting cross-legged on the ground, like a vegetative state. Even if he killed Lu Yizhan, he would never have thought that someone would silently break into the cave where he was hiding in such a short period of time. The moment Xiaopingan took the first step, Xiaopingan took action. Xiaopingan pointed at Lu Yizhan, and with a bolt of lightning, he hit Lu Yizhan in the head. Lu Yizhan's whole body was electrified and on fire. The partially healed skin was carbonized again. His whole body was burnt on the outside and tender on the inside. He smoked and screamed. The blood in his mouth spurted out as if he was punching through the intestines. The secret altar, the core of divine power that had just been gathered in the city, suddenly collapsed completely and went crazy. The next second, Lu Yizhan's body was tied up by the magic vines emerging from the ground. Lu Yizhan finally opened his eyes. He saw nothing. He only saw a summoned giant, leaping up in the air, facing him with his butt, and sitting down like a mountain. The giant's huge the butt smashed down toward his head and body like 2 door panels. But, damn it! Lu Yizhan didn't even have time to scold. Boom! Lu Yizhan was directly pushed into the ground by the giant. His whole body was embedded in the rocks on the ground. He vomited blood and his face was deflated. He felt that the newly healed bones on his body were all broken again. The person was completely unconscious, stuck to the ground like a puddle of mud, and could no longer move. The giant's palm grabbed Lu Yushuan's head, and with just a little force, it seemed like he could twist off Lu Yushuan's head. Xiaopingan walked over calmly, looked at the unconscious Lu Yizhan and the blood on the ground, frowned slightly, and said, "How ugly." At this moment, Lu Yizhan was no longer human. Not an inch of skin on his body was intact. His head was bald with not a single hair on it. He still had half of his immortal bones, just like a slaughtered animal that had lost its hair and emerged from a fire. Like a monkey escaping from death. A strong man in the 8 Yang realm has a great life, and he's not dead yet. Xiaopingan touched Lu Yizhan's breath and found that this guy was still alive despite such serious injuries. Isn't it a bit of a waste to kill him like this? Xiaopingan rubbed his chin and thought. Looking at the unconscious Lu Yizhan, Xiaopingan's eyes suddenly became strange and dangerous, and a look appeared on his face. Strange smile. Monkey. Xiaopingan's voice sounded in the cave, followed by low laughter. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 488. Lu Yizhan woke up quietly at some point. He opened his eyes and felt like he had a splitting headache, just like an ordinary person would when he was drunk. The light and shadow in front of his eyes were shaking. It looked like he was still in the hole on the bottom of the sea. The blue light and shadow of water beads made everything hazy. Then, Lu Yizhan saw a strange man squatting on the ground in front of him. The man was facing away from him, but that back figure was extremely unfamiliar to Lu Yizhan. Lu Yizhan was sure that I have never seen that man before. The most important thing is that the man is holding the top quality Horcrux that he collected from Xiaoping'an before. The man is holding the Horcrux and is still muttering to himself, haha, finally something returned to the original owner. Why doesn't this guy have a world bead on his body? I'll go. On the ground, in addition to the Horcrux, there are also millions of gold coins from his secret mandala space equipment, a sacred artifact embryo, some elixirs, a lot of insect crystals, war partners, array discs, and all kinds of things. The weird things had almost emptied out the contents of his secret mandala space equipment. The contents of my secret mandala space equipment were exposed. Lu Yizhan was shocked. Seeing that the man had his back turned to him, Lu Yujian gritted his teeth and wanted to cast a spell to sneak up on him from behind. However, when he sensed it, he realized that he could no longer sense the existence of his secret mandala. Just this one move made Lu Yushuan's soul disappear. And looking at the man throwing things that should have belonged to him into his space equipment, without any defense against him, Lu Yuqian gritted his teeth, his eyes showed a fierce side, he groped with his hands on the ground, and finally he touched a sharp stone with edges and corners, and when he was about to pick it up, Lu Yushuan realized that he couldn't get the stone. What's going on? Lu Yizhan then turned his head to look at his hand. At this sight, Lu Yizhan suddenly felt horrified, and all the hairs on his body stood up. What he saw was not a human hand, but an animal hand that was slender, thin, and hairless, just like a monkey's hand. Lu Yushuan moved his fingers, and the hand he saw also moved his fingers. Lu Yushuan raised his two hands in front of him, and moved them again. These were not his hands, they were clearly monkey's hands. Then, Lu Yizhan couldn't help but scream. However, he found that his throat did not make a sound, but a monkey's cry, chirp. Lu Yizhan felt that his head was about to explode. He rolled his eyes and fainted again. Xiaoping'an turned his head, glanced at Lu Yushuan, who had fainted on the ground and turned into a monkey, and continued to put the things Lu Yushuan revealed into his space warehouse. The ability of this sealing technique to unlock the sealing monkey was brought about by a monkey crown world bead that he fused some time ago, and it happened to be used on Lu Yizhan. After being turned into a monkey by Xiaoping'an, Lu Yizhan's connection with the secret mandala was completely cut off, so the contents of his space equipment also exploded, filling almost half of the cave. However, although there were many things, and some seemed to be very precious, they did not contain the world beads that Xiaoping'an needed most at the moment, which made Xiaoping'an a little disappointed. Putting away what Lu Yizhan had exploded, Xiaoping'an took out a small animal cage from his space warehouse, then used two fingers to pinch the neck of Lu Yizhan, who had fallen into coma again, and pulled Lu Yizhan out. One lot was thrown into the animal cage. Carrying the beast cage, he put away the water-repelling beads in the cave, and then put away Lu Yushuan's formation plate. The next second, the turbulent sea water poured into the cave again. Xiaoping'an protected it with a water shield. He and the animal cage in his hands swam out of the cave quickly like a fish. You can't stay in this place for too long. If the blood demon sect really has a strong master to chase him, or even the emotion appears, it will be troublesome. So, let's change the place first. Xiaoping'an, who was carrying the animal cage, quickly flew towards the sea. In the blink of an eye, he broke through the water and came into the sky. He changed direction and flew directly towards the east. In fact, Xiaoping'an doesn't know where he is going now. He just wants to leave Yundao first. He can't stay in this immortal sea. There was too much noise about the fusion of the Saint Master World Pearl before, and the emotion already knows that he is hiding in the Sea of Immortality, and it is possible that he obtained the Holy Master World Pearl by joining the Wanshen sect. The Wanshen sect has been exposed and is being targeted by the emotion. Therefore, all his previous plans to join the Wanshen sect will be ruined. From waking up in the Immortal City to meeting Lu Yizhan, a series of changes happened in less than 2 days, which made Xiaopingan a little overwhelmed and could only take one step at a time. A few hours later, it was dawn. Xiaopingan had flown more than 2,000 miles. The sun rose from the sea level and lit up a golden light on the vast and boundless sea. This beautiful sunrise on the sea was already very beautiful to Xiaopingan. Not seen for a long time, he flew towards the sun in the sky. Chirp! Lu Yizhan finally woke up again in the cage and saw that he was locked in the cage. Lu Yizhan kept screaming in the cage and touched his body and face with his thin hands, with a dull look on his face. Terrified, he pulled at the iron fence of the cage and screamed. Lu Yushuan, you are lucky to be alive. You are just a monkey raised by me now. If you bark again and make me upset, I will throw you from the air into the sea to feed the fish. Do you believe it? Ping An glanced at Lu Yizhan coldly and spoke directly. Lu Yizhan in the cage understood, and the piercing scream suddenly stopped. The world is finally clean. Xiaopingan was too lazy to say anything else, so he just let Lu Yuxuan slowly adapt to his new identity. In the sky, you can occasionally see summoners flying out of the sea, or summoners traveling together in the sky. Xiaopingan used illusion magic to become invisible and just flew along. From time to time, you can see large or small islands or reefs on the sea. Some islands and reefs are desolate, while some islands and reefs have obvious traces of artificial buildings and formations, indicating that this place has been Mingdao as an owner. Xiaopingan flew very far in this flight. He flew from the time the sun first rose to when the sun set again on the sea level behind him. He had exhausted a lot of his magical power. He was afraid that after flying 7,000 or 8,000 miles, the sun would set there. In the afterglow, a desolate island with a radius of dozens of kilometers appeared in front of him. The island is full of dark volcanic rocks, and the island is surrounded by turquoise sea water. In the sea water, pieces of reefs are looming on the sea. On the beach of the island and on the reefs, looking from the sky, there are many hidden reefs. The waves hit the giant conch shells on the beach, and there were even more fragments of those conch shells. Countless conch shell fragments stretched out on the beach in a debris belt of hundreds of meters, which was several meters thick. How big were the conch shells? The smallest one was almost 10 meters high. It was washed up on the island by the sea water, like huts on the beach. This place seems to be a graveyard for these giant conches. There was no one around the island, and the sight was bright. There seemed to be no eye-catching presence in the nearby sea. Seeing this desolate island, Xiaopingan's heart moved, and he said to himself, "This is it," and then fell from the sky. Go down. After Xiaopingan flew around the island, he found that there was no better place to stay on the island. Most of the giant conch shells washed up on the beach were damaged. With this discovery, Xiaopingan directly flying to the water outside the island. As soon as I entered the water, my God, it was another scene. There were many more giant conch shells underwater than on the shore. They were almost everywhere. In the entire sea, you could see giant conch shells everywhere. The conch shells are scattered on the soft sandy beach of the seabed, or in the coral reefs. After a while, Xiaopingan found a huge conch shell in the coral reef hundreds of meters deep. The conch shell was white, more than 30 meters high, like a tower, standing quietly on a piece of coral. Being stuck by the coral reef, Xiaopingan drilled in from the bottom entrance of the conch shell and found that it was unusually spacious inside. It's also very clean. The passage inside the conch shell rises in a spiral shape, like a spiral staircase. It's absolutely no problem to live in this conch shell for a while, it's secluded and quiet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 489. Xiaoping'an took out the waterproofing bead. Wherever the blue brilliance touched, the sea water in the conch shell was pushed out by an invisible force and was expelled from the conch shell. All of a sudden, the inside of the conch shell suddenly became clean and bright. Haha, Lu Yizan, your waterproof bead is quite effective. This bead can be said to be a treasure hidden under the sea. Xiaoping'an said, and then placed the cage containing Lu Yizan next to it. Chirp. Lu Yizan rummaged around in the cage and seemed to have understood his identity at the moment. Lu Yizan wanted to say something, but Xiaoping'an was too lazy to listen to his nonsense at the moment and still let him stay in the cage. There is no air under the water, nor in the conch shell, but the magical thing about the water-repelling beads is that while the water-repelling beads push away the sea water, the oxygen in the water is retained by the water-repelling beads. The place where the energy barrier of the water-repelling bead comes into contact with the sea water is like an invisible membrane. The membrane filters the air in the sea water, allowing people to breathe freely in it. It was the first time for Xiaoping'an to use water-repelling beads, and he was not very familiar with the properties of water-repelling beads. He even let the God of Fortune boy out to take a look. The God of Fortune flew around the outside of this huge conch shell and found that from the outside, this huge conch shell looked normal. There was no faint blue light inside. It was not excluded. The scope of the energy field of the water-repelling bead was inside the conch shell. It was restricted by the shell space structure inside the conch shell. This made Xiaoping'an feel relieved at once. Such a conch shell. The shell is completely inconspicuous when hidden in the coral reefs on the seabed. Then, Xiaoping'an took out the array disk that Lu Yushuan had signed, and directly activated the array disk in the conch shell. With the activation of the array disk, the conch shell suddenly became a secret room, and the security was improved. It is guaranteed that even if a master comes to cause trouble, he will be trapped in the formation. Looking at the conch shell in front of him, Xiaoping'an said with some emotion, "This is really a dojo inside a conch shell." Yes, this huge conch shell will be Xiaoping'an's dojo and foothold in the future. It is far away from the noise and disputes of the immortal sea, and no one will disturb it. It is just enough for Xiaoping'an to practice here for a while, at least let's settle the matter of the clone first. Calculating the time since he left the earth, it has been more than 2 days and almost 3 days. Xiaoping'an doesn't know what the condition of the clone is. If he was going to be killed, he should have been killed long ago. He had already made the worst plan. The worst thing to do is find another one. Thinking like this, Xiaoping'an's mentality completely calmed down and he was no longer in a hurry. There is no point in being anxious. First, deal with the matters related to the life of this deity in front of you properly. Xiaoping'an found a place to sit down comfortably, with his back against the smooth inner wall of the conch shell, and then took out his tortoise shell 5 elements upside down bag with sword formation. This formation plate saved his life when the Abyss Insect King raided the Immortal City. Of course Xiaoping'an would not forget that this thing was of great use. The array plate of the tortoise shell 5 elements reversed bag with sword formation has been damaged, and Xiaoping'an is ready to repair it now. Taking out the formation disc, he also took out a pile of gold coins and a few strange black metals obtained from Lu Yizan, and Xiaoping'an was ready to repair the formation disc. Those pieces of black metal were extremely dark in color, as if they could absorb light, and when held in the hand, they weighed almost twice as much as gold. The characteristics of this metal reminded Xiaoping'an of Tei black gold, but Tei black gold he had never seen it before, only in the secret book, so he was not sure. Xiaoping'an used a little of his secret mandala's divine power to soak into the metal, but it was absorbed by the metal like a sponge. This characteristic, very similar to Tei black gold. Xiaopinggan took out a piece of dark metal and asked Lu Yizhan directly in the cage, "Is this Tei black gold? If it is, you nod. If not, you shake your head. If you lied to me, I will stop one finger from you." Lu Yizhan in the cage certainly understood. Lu Yizhan, who turned into a monkey, bowed his hands and nodded desperately. As expected, this bastard Lu Yizhan still has some good things. This Tei black gold is one of the rare metals that is 10,000 times more precious than gold. Even if you have money, you may not be able to buy it. These precious metals are used by the big guys to make Horcruxes. Holy weapons or high-level formation disk raw materials. Lu Yizhan's space equipment contains almost 300 to 500 kilograms of Tei black gold. If you know it is Tei black gold, then it will be easier to handle. Xiaopinggan picked up a piece of Tei black gold, directly made the secret handprint, and started refining it. The piece of Tei black gold floated in front of Xiaopinggan, and was instantly surrounded by a high-temperature blue flame. Ordinary flames could not melt Tei black gold, so when melting Tei black gold, divine power must be used as a catalyst to melt the Tei black gold. When divine power is injected into Tei black gold will melt at high temperatures and become malleable. As Xiaopinggan's divine power was injected into it, the piece of Tei black gold melted bit by bit under the high temperature flame. Then, Xiaopinggan grabbed the gold coin in front of him and rubbed it with his hands. He turned the gold coin into fine powder. The fine powder fell from the air and turned into drops of gold liquid. The drops fell onto the ground and melted into a ball of liquid. Tei black gold. Tei black gold cannot be used directly in boilers. It must be alloyed with gold to be used. However, the proportion of gold in it must be controlled very strictly. It can only be added drop by drop after melting. If the ratio is not controlled well, Tei black gold will directly it breaks out and is difficult to use. After just fusing more than 6 gold coins of gold liquid, the color of the Tei black gold instantly changed from black to deep purple. That was enough. Xiaopinggan stopped for a moment. Afterwards, Xiaopinggan played the magic formula, and the melted dark purple liquid was gradually absorbed by his array disk, turning into a purple liquid film, covering the entire array disk. Part of the cracks on the tortoise shell 5 elements upside down bag was sword formation were filled and repaired by the purple liquid of Tei black gold in the blink of an eye. The 6 golden turtles on the formation disk flew out, giving way to the 6 formations on the formation disk. Afterwards, the purple liquid of Tei black gold gradually turned into the shape of 6 golden turtles in Xiaopinggan's handprints. The 6 golden turtles returned to their positions. After the excess Tei black gold purple liquid repaired the formation disk, all the rest was absorbed by the formation disk. After Xiaopinggan finished his work, he stretched out his hand, and a gold-tinged purple, seemingly luxurious and deep tortoise shell 5 elements inverted bag was sword formation plate fell firmly into Xiaopinggan's hand. Compared with the previous formation disk, this new formation disk is not only completely repaired, but the formation base of the formation disk has been strengthened by Tei black gold, and its endurance has been greatly increased. As the 6 golden turtles in the formation device, they have all become the material of Tei black gold directly increased the defensive power of the array by more than 40%. Even if we encounter the same huge changes as before in the Immortal City, this formation will last longer. When he cracked Lu Yizhu's formation plate before, Xiaopinggan had some experience with the structure of the chain formation and the formation plate, but now he didn't bother to test it, so he first repaired and strengthened the old formation plate so that it could be used. After repairing the formation disk, 3 or 4 hours passed. When Xiaopinggan was repairing the array, Lu Yizhan in the animal cage had been watching with wide eyes. He was extremely quiet, with focused eyes and a solemn expression. Occasionally, there would be a few strange flashes in his eyes. Lu Yizhan seemed to somewhat understood why he was attacked while recovering in the cave. The man in front of him was a powerful formation master. But, how does this formation master know his name and whereabouts? Lu Yizhan vaguely felt that this formation master seemed to be related to Xiaopinggan, but he was so cunning that he just didn't ask. No, Xiaopinggan didn't give him a chance to speak at all. There are countless mysteries filling Lu Yushuan's head. Xiaopinggan put away the formation disc, glanced at Lu Yushuan, and continued working to make things. This time, silver coins melted in front of Xiaopinggan. Under the spell and flames, 2 hours later, a lifelike silver puppet spider the size of a palm appeared on Xiaopinggan's palm. As Xiaopinggan forced a drop of blood to fall on the head of the puppet spider's body shook violently, its eyes opened suddenly, and then it crawled around on Xiaopinggan's hand, flexibly incomparable. This mechanism puppet spider is a first-level mechanism puppet in the Kunlun formation mechanism collection, called the Iron Guard Spider. Its refining diagram and related magic tricks are included in the collection. For an mechanic, the process of using secret methods to create puppets and various mechanical beasts is two completely different levels of creation than engineers making car robots. One of them follows complete physical laws, and the other it follows the rules of magic. The energy systems cited by the two are completely different. The energy of the former comes from energy sources such as electricity and petroleum. The energy must be drawn from the outside world, while the energy of the latter comes from the core of the 5 elements array in the refining drawing. The former is to create mechanical products, while the latter is more like creating and incubating a simple life with a mechanical appearance. Some high-level machine puppets even have considerable intelligence and self-learning capabilities. Seeing that Xiaopinggan actually created a silver puppet spider, Lu Yizhan looked at Xiaopinggan in the cage, and his eyes became even weirder. Array master and mechanic master, these two professions are not very compatible, but the person in front of me actually knows both. Looking at this little silver spider, Xiaopinggan had a smile on his face. The machine master is actually the profession that can best bring back the feeling of childhood. Xiaopinggan wanted to try the ability of this first-level machine puppet. He took out a silver coin, flicked it on his finger, pointed at the silver coin, and gave the order to kill in his heart. The silver puppet spider in his hand suddenly bounced up, and suddenly bounced up. More than 2 meters high, there was a flash of silver light in the air, and the silver coin was split into 2 halves, falling from the air into 2 halves. Then the puppet spider landed firmly on the ground. Lu Yizhan was still watching, but Xiaopinggan pointed at Lu Yizhan in the cage and said to the puppet spider, "If it leaves the cage, kill it." The puppet spider understood, nodded, and then quickly ran to the animal cage, squatted down in front of Lu Yizhan, and stared at Lu Yizhan. Lu Yizhan would never take such a gadget that could only deal with ordinary people in the past, but at this moment he is just a monkey. Looking at the silver coin broken in half on the ground, Lu Yizhan only felt bitterness in mouth. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 490. Xiaopinggan ignored Lu Yizhan in the animal cage. This was a warning to Lu Yizhan. He used the machine technique to create the puppet spider, which was actually used to deal with Lu Yushuan. It was a small insurance. If he entered the spiritual world and returned to the earth in 2 days, he and Lu Yi would be in the beast cage. When the contract is in the same place, there must be something that can deter Lu Yizhan, lest Lu Yizhan have other thoughts. When it comes to summoning objects, the time it takes for those summoned objects to come to the plane will not be too long. They will dissipate in 3 to 5 days at most, which will not have much effect. But this puppet spider is different, even if it is just here to stare at. I have been with Lu Yi for 10 or 8 years, and there is no problem. Of course, this premise is that Lu Yizhuan can escape from the animal cage. From the current point of view, Lu Yizhuan cannot and does not have the ability to escape from the animal cage. Therefore, this puppet spider is a just-in-case measure. In fact, because this guy Lu Yazan is so cunning and cruel, he has to be on guard. You can just eat this these days. Xiaoping'an took out a handful of bigo pills and threw them directly into the trough of the animal cage. Then he waved his hand gently, and the animal cage containing Lu Yishu passed beside him. The space inside the conch shell rotated in circles like a slide, sliding to a place under the conch shell that he couldn't see. He knew that Lu Yazan was very smart and could think wildly. He had let Lu Yazan see his abilities as a formation master and mechanism master before, just to make Lu Yazan confused about his identity. Now his goal had been achieved. Xiaoping'an was too lazy to let Lu Yazan peek at his news anymore. Seeing the animal cage containing Lu Yazan sliding down, the puppet spider opened its legs, like a fast-moving spider, and quickly moved its legs. It followed the animal cage to the bottom, and then died. Staring at the animal cage, faithfully executing Xiaoping'an's instructions, the biggest advantage of these machine puppets is that they will never betray their master. Just like a program, they will always execute the master's orders. As long as the monkey in the cage escapes from the cage, kill the monkey. This command is very simple and the puppet spider can execute it meticulously. Xiaoping'an took 2 magic pills and bigo pills, drank some water, and then started to sleep with his eyes closed. From the great changes in the undead city to the present, from fighting and running all the way to now, he hasn't closed his eyes yet, and he also feels a little tired. After taking the elixir and resting for 3 or 4 hours with his eyes closed, Xiaoping'an's energy recovered again. Afterwards, Xiaoping'an took out the newly acquired world beads. This world bead was obtained after killing the winged flame insect in the immortal city. After the winged flame insect was sent to the secret and candid warehouse, it was torn into pieces by the alchemists and craftsmen in the mandala. Xiaoping'an also got 2 world beads. Of the 2 world beads, one is Tianguangluniang's world bead that Xiaoping'an has fused before, and the other is one that he has not fused before, and can be taken out for fusion now. This boundary bead flashes with an earthy yellow light. There is a blur of light and shadow in the boundary bead. In the light and shadow is the figure of a soldier wearing a battle armor. That soldier is by no means an ordinary soldier. Ordinary soldiers will not carry so many weapons, and the soldier, from the light and shadow, can be seen wearing thick armor and carrying at least 3 weapons. He carries a huge shield and arrows on his back, and the appearance of a crossbow can be faintly seen. And the soldier still held a halberd in his hand and a sword hanging on his waist. For an ancient soldier, this soldier was armed to the teeth. In all dynasties, there was only one Wei Wuzi who could complete this configuration for soldiers. Just as Xiaoping'an thought, the small seal script in this world bead only has 3 characters Wei Wuzi. This is the strongest infantry in Chinese history, no one. This is the first army special forces in Chinese history created by the military god Wu Qi. Yes, in Xiaoping'an's view, Wei Wuzi is the first real special forces in Chinese history. Almost every soldier in this unit is selected according to Wu Qi's criteria for selecting special forces, and then goes through only through rigorous training can one become an army. How strong is Wei Wuzi? From the time this force appeared until it was submerged in the long river of history, this force participated in 72 battles without a single defeat. In the Battle of Yin and Jin, the powerful and brave 500,000 Qin troops who dominated the world were defeated by 10,000 Wei soldiers were defeated, and one of the Wei soldiers was equal to 10 against the Qin army. In the era of Wei Wuzi, the entire Qin state was shrouded in the shadow of Wei Wuzi. The Qin army was overwhelmed by Wei Wuzi. Wu Qi relied on Wei Wuzi to suppress the powerful Qin state. The narrow strip of land to the west of Huashan Mountain, but unable to cross Huashan Mountain, is like pressing a fierce tiger and a mad dragon to the ground and rubbing them. Although history has always liked to judge heroes in terms of success or failure, the brilliant achievements created by Wei Wuzi were worthy of being the first army in the world in ancient China. The brave spirit of the Chinese ancestors was most vividly demonstrated by Wei Wuzi. After dripping blood on the boundary bead, Xiaoping's entire body was surrounded by an earthy yellow light cocoon in just a short time. Xiaoping opened his eyes and found that he was standing on a high platform. Next to him, military generals looked serious and stood on both sides with their swords pressed. In front of him was a school field in a huge military camp. Behind him, there were flags. Like clouds, they rustled in the wind, and a huge wave flag stood in the middle. A man with a long beard wearing a graceful and elegant purple lapel robe, a jade pendant on his waist, and a red coat stood next to Xiaoping. "General, the elite of the Wei Kingdom are here." "I will leave them to the general," he said. "I also ask the general to feel free to select elite soldiers to form military soldiers." The general said that soldiers are more valuable than more troops. "I feel that it is reasonable. I will wait and see here today to see how the general chooses." Looking at the appearance of the man in front of him, Xiaoping knew that this man was Wei Wenhou, and he was also a wise king. Without Wei Wenhou, there would be no hegemony of Wei state, let alone Wei soldiers. Xiaoping bowed to Wei Wenhou, then walked to the stage, thought about it for a while, and began to speak loudly. "Today, Your Majesty is here, and I will select the elites of the Wei Kingdom for Your Majesty. Your Majesty has promised that all the soldiers selected by me today will be exempted from all taxes and taxes for the whole family in the future. If there are outstanding performers, they will also be rewarded with land and houses. Real estate. There are no loudspeakers in this era, and Wu Qi is not a peerless master in the novel. A lion's roar can be heard within a few miles. On such an occasion, in the army below, every few dozen at every step, there will be an officer standing next to the queue. The officer in front will shout out what he heard word for word, and the officer behind will pass it on when he hears it. So for a while, the whole school field is full of Wei. The national officers roared at the top of their lungs, conveying what Xiaoping had just said word for word, so that all the soldiers could hear it. During the Warring States period, due to various countries competing for hegemony, the taxes on the common people of all countries were very heavy. The soldiers of the Wei state in the school field were shocked. If you are selected today, you will be exempted from all taxes and taxes on your family. This treatment is so exciting. It is really when one person joins the army, the whole family is honored and the whole village is envied. Everyone suddenly became energetic, pricked up their ears and puffed up their chests, wanting to hear Xiaoping explain the selection criteria. Xiaoping spoke again after waiting for the continuous chatter on the school field to finally stop. "If you want to be selected, your whole family will be exempted from the corvée tax. It's very simple. As long as you can do what I said below, you can be selected. I only have one condition. Anyone who wants to be selected as a warrior must wear 3 layers of heavy armor. He can fire a 12-stone crossbow with an iron helmet, carry 50 crossbow bolts on his back, carry a long sword or an iron halberd, carry a sharp sword, carry 3 days of combat provisions and shields, and be able to march 100 miles in a day. Anyone can be selected as a soldier." This was only the most basic requirement for selecting Wei Wuzu. After completing the selection, Xiaoping also knew that Wu Qi would create the earliest elite training and teaching system for Wei Wuzu that was far ahead of this era. Stroke established a training mechanism that was equivalent to a training camp for later generations. It is said that if one person learns, he will teach 10 people, if 10 people learn it, he will teach it to hundreds of people, if 10 people learn it, he will teach it to 3 armies. He served as an instructor in this. They are all top masters who use crossbows, swords, long swords, or iron halberds to fight on the battlefield, and they are exactly the same as the instructors of the special forces.